Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Webble. I've been a product manager for 3 years, and today I want to share with you how to create a roadmap. Usually, what I like to do is actually create my roadmap in Figma. Now, there's a lot of opinions on this. You can create your roadmap in Jira, you can use Trello. There's so many software tools that you can use out there. But this is just from my personal experience, how I do it, right? So you might find another tool that works best for you. So in Figma, all you need to do is go to hit the plus along the top and click FigJam, right? And then in FigJam, there's a feature along the right here, and all you have to do is do Agile Roadmap and then templates. And then here you'll be able to add this template by dragging and dropping it. So try that again. There we go. Oh, just a little slow. This is an out-of-the-box roadmap that Figma provides. Now, from here, you'll be able to kind of custom and design this. For instance, I can click this component that comes with it. Other templates don't really have this one, so that's why I like the Agile roadmap, and then click the dates. And then I'll be able to define, the year and then the start month, so let's say January, and then the end date would be December. And then I just click the first and then the 31st like that. And then it auto generates all the months and weeks within those months for me. And then what I like to do is just extend this roadmap along here and then kind of just copy these columns pretty much all along to kind of give it some background. And what you can kind of do is use these blocks here for like features, kind of like user stories or a task that is being done within that week, basically. So that is really one way to get started and create a roadmap. But I want to get deeper with you. I think that's a fairly simple overview of how you could make a roadmap. But I want to get into the in depths of the thinking behind. We're going to go over all of this. What kind of gets into a roadmap? How do you intelligently build a roadmap, right? So I like to start on this side. This is kind of the customer discovery, customer research side. First, with any product, software product, and SaaS, you're going to do customer interviews. And then what that is just called qualitative data, right? Usually you kind of compile it into a report, you have a use case, you're trying to figure out what are the workflows, what is the culture like, who are the key stakeholders and players. In my industry with biotechnology and pharma, you might think about a lab and you interview the lab workers and you talk about, okay, we might have a work order, there's R&D manager, there is kind of people in the middle who are like kind of middle managers to the technicians, and the technicians are the guys who are executing experiments. There is a relationship sociologically between people and how people interact at work. And that's what you're trying to really do. Another great example, let's just look at Uber for a second. I got this online, is that, Uber is arbitraging basically the driver and the rider, right? Like it's really hard for a rider to kind of find somebody to drive them around. You used to just like have a friend, but Uber is just that app that is going to be able to take the payment from the rider and then give it to the driver and then take kind of percentage of that basically, right? So that is kind of the relationship. They had two stakeholders and their app just facilitated that, right? So finally, let's talk about some quantitative data. So another thing you could do is take surveys, right, of your customer segment, your customer. You're not going to sell your product to everyone. Most likely, you're narrowing it down to what people say a niche, most likely. But there's just called customer segmentation and differentiation. There's different groups of customers, and your product has to really appeal to them. But you really won't know what that is unless you talk to them and interview them directly or do a survey. Another good one is Google Analytics. Now, usually this is built after you've built the product in, right? You've created a web page and a product, and you can embed Google Analytics into your web page to kind of get really user retention metrics. Like how long are people really staying on the page and how many people are like signing up. There's also other interesting software that I recommend people using is Hotjar. right? So in Hotjar, they create heat maps and it kind of tracks your mouse across the screen. It's really cool. I'll go over it in another video. But if you click, if thousands of people come to your website and 10% of them click in one location or button, that kind of tells you a keyword is really popular on that page. And all that data comes into qualitative data. And really, what we need to do with this data is basically do what's called A/B testing. It's where we can compare, let's say, one web page or one feature or email against the equivalent, right? So I can compare a front page with another design of that front page and then send users to both of those and then collect data through Google Analytics on both pages. And all the A/B testing is hypothesis testing. You might have heard the term thrown around called significant fig or sig fig. You're kind of saying like, oh, well, this website is through hypothesis testing is more significant than this other one. Like it's like a proven thing through stats, right? Statistics. Here's just some real life examples that I've done personally. So like you can do A/B testing per email in the email campaigns. Let's say I have an email campaign. I shoot out 5 different emails. The first email, the follow-up email, the third follow-up, and the fourth follow-up email. We can compare the click-through rate on all these emails and say, well, the third email performed really great for some reason. It stuck out. Maybe the keywords in there are kind of resonating with people and you have enough data and significant evidence to prove that, right? And then finally, you have A/B testing for email campaigns, right? Hold on, let me turn off Discord. It is making so many notification sounds. And then you could say email campaigns. Email campaigns can have 5 sets of emails, or you have like 5 different web pages you might have, right, within 3 months. And then you send thousands of users to those email campaigns, and you can compare the campaign to see which one performed better. And then finally, what you really want to do with all this data, if we're thinking about like a SaaS product, right, is that on a per month basis, this is called a cohort analysis. So like every month you'll have 1,000 users, their cohort, like a generational cohort. I apologize. Let me. All right, I'm back. So here, this is what we had called cohort analysis, right? So if I have 1,000 users in January, that's a cohort maybe. Like this is a month that they've spent on the app for a period of time. Now let's say I go into the next month and we updated the app, right? And we spent a few more months and we look at what's happened and we can then compare that cohort, the second month to the first month, and we can see that retention went down. Or, we could do more updates and then see retention went down further, and we can kind of compare cohorts. At the end of the day, all we're doing to think about what features we should do and not do is really, we're doing hypothesis driven development. Now, this isn't my graphic. There's going to be a link in the bottom of the YouTube video. But, we develop a hypothesis. You do an experiment. That's what many startups do. They get that information out there and then they collect the data on what they've done. And then they will either develop a data set or some insights or a conclusion about their hypothesis. And then they'll just kind of iterate on what they have. Another way to look at it, I got this from another company because I really love it because it's a little bit more true to what goes on, is that people within an organization will have a research team, right, of user designers, and they will go off and interview customers, collect this Google Analytics data, generate these insights, and then they'll work with a design team. You got a UI designer, UX designer, not the researcher. There's a UX researcher on the left. And then on the right, they'll kind of talk and work together to develop the vision of what the product should be and what these features should do, staying true within the vision of that. And obviously, these things will have to make revenue. So at the end of the day, all we're really looking at is a hypothesis. Like this hypothesis is every feature you develop in an application is a hypothesis of, will the users love it and will users buy it, and how much will this cost us too? So there's those other elements too. Then I just want to talk about the SaaS pipeline a little bit. I can go on longer about each of this, but overall, let's say I have a marketing team and they're focused on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, and getting people to the website, and they're using Framer to manage that. And you got Google Analytics. Then you have the designers and developers. They work together to work on a core product. At the end of the day, they need to optimize the UX experience, the user experience, to get them to end up paying for that product. Is it valuable enough that I feel, psychologically compelled to make that purchase, right? Um, this could have hundreds of features. Like we're talking about like the front web page, what is that designed like? What's the sign up like? What's the log out? How do I delete my account? How do I do billing? It just can really go on and on and on forever. So a lot of organizations, a lot of companies, a lot of startups, what they struggle with is what should we work on? What should we do this year? What matters the most? And that's why they hire product managers to achieve that. Let's just look at an example feature. Let's say I'm doing RBAC. This is known as role-based access control. And it's a feature in really complicated B2B apps where you're able to create custom roles and control what users can and can't do, basically. It's a lot more complicated than that. And of course, it's another video. But what a lot of product managers do is that they create an epic of that feature. And then they create user stories under that epic. And then we kind of ask ourselves, like, did this really do it, right? Did this really do it for the feature? Did we really meet the needs of the user? Like, let me get a question mark here. Question. I forgot to do this earlier, but we're just going to do it together. But like, did we really meet the needs of the users? Because if you go back, all this data we're collecting, we're asking ourselves, like, what is the problem we're solving? Are people actually going to come buy this? Do they feel compelled by the design? Do they find it attractive enough to stay on the page and read about these things? Keeping that retention, and because we live in a very high intense attention economy, right? There's so much content out there, so much TV stuff. Um, but in a lot of niches, you'll find things where the content is not good enough, but the quality of that is not good enough, right? Now, what will happen is we'll generate hundreds of user stories. Like you might have something like 30 epics of features you want to do just for your product, and then you'll end up with hundreds of user story, like thousands of user stories for those epics, possibly. User stories, this is another video, but you know, it's best to explain it that it just breaks down into what are we coding for the user experience, right? Like what are the clicks that they're experiencing, and does the functionality meet that? I like to think of them more as business requirements, really like short business requirements that people can kind of understand and do. And then these user stories are used in Agile and Scrum and Sprint and broken down into what's known as a task. Again, another video. But let's just talk about, like, well, what should we prioritize, right? So we can use a concept called RICE. The RICE score, this is a horrible typo. The RICE score is simply asking us how many users will this feature reach? What's the impact? How confident as the team, are we able to execute and do this? And how much effort will it take? So what you do is you kind of ask yourself, well, what's the reach? Reach can mean different things. For in the past, it could be purchase orders. How many people are going to purchase it? Or how many people are going to sign up? Maybe people are prioritizing growth, thousands of users, right? So I might say, well, if we don't have sign up, I think the reach is going to be a big deal if we need sign up in the app. Let's say it's 2000. RBAC, yeah, users want RBAC, but when they land on the page, that might not be the first thing we need to build right now, right? Stripe, well, the Stripe payment comes kind of secondary to the sign up, right? If I can't get in the app, if I can't experience the product, if I can't get value out of that for my own workflow, for my own problems, it means nothing, right? Stripe is not going to matter as much. So just in this hypothetical situation, I listed reach as 2000. Now for impact, it could be measured at 3. I think the sign up's going to be really impactful. It's massive. You can do 1 for medium impact here. Then confidence is a percentage. And then you can kind of do things by like asking yourself, well, it'll take the research team 1 week, it'll take the design team 1 week, it'll take the engineering team 3 weeks to implement this. And then we can kind of put that in terms of months, right? Every situation is different, every team is different. So unfortunately, this is more of a gut check way to generate a score. But the way you calculate this score, right, is that you have reach times impact times confidence divided by effort, right? So 300 times 1 times 50, 150 divided by 5, you end up, I think, with the right score of 30 there. Let's actually check, let's just check my math really quick. I was too confident for that. Oh, I think I'm off. Oh, now it's 30. Okay. But yeah, you would calculate a race score. Now, the rice score is great to tell us, like, hey, feature A, let's say feature A was supposed to be RBAC. That has a lower score compared to other features. Now, let's say I have features like, the rice score here. Let's just do this. Let's say my RBAC's 30 there, my payment flow is 200, my front page is 500, my core product's 389, right? Here, this is how you can kind of give a score to features and then work on prioritization. Because the number one question people will ask you as a product manager is like, what are we working on next? They want you to have all the answers, and it's really hard to have all the answers, but there's a way scientifically and through data you can really kind of provide that for people in a clear answer, right? So here we just go ahead and I would sort it for people, right? I would do this in a Word document, honestly, but this is kind of a simplification. I've used this in GitLab, or Jira has kind of a feature like this, but obviously if we're building something, we need a front page. And then, the product probably matters a lot more, but just for the sake of example, I'm just going to like organize these things, right? And now once we've organized things, this kind of gives you like a sequence of events, right? Like just coming down like right here. This gives me an idea of like what we need to do first and what we should sort of do last, right? So that's where the roadmap came in. So earlier I kind of showed you how to build a roadmap, right? So I want to also, so what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of take this kind of like epic and say like, well, what does what does a front page really need, right? So if I'm in the let's start with designers here. Okay, so if I'm looking at a 3-week period in January, right, we need a home page. That's the first thing. We needed some like data on like what are some keywords. I'm just going to make this smaller. So what you do is you click left and then click K to scale this down. So maybe we'll just scale it down. And I'm keeping it on 3 bars here because that represents like a 3-week sprint. So I'm asking the designers, hey, can you design me a homepage really quickly? Okay, great. Then after a homepage, I think I'm going to need more like use case solution pages. Well, we'll definitely need a contact page. Let's go back. Maybe a solution page isn't the major thing. Okay, contact us page. Great. All right then. And then we can also have multiple priorities within these 3 weeks, like you could do the homepage and the contact us page. But just for the sake of example, I'm really like dumbing it down to these basic elements. So, okay, we need that homepage, we need that front page, right? The contact us, the solutions page. What else we'll need here? I think we'll also need a blogging page, things like that. We could, I think you could really fill a roadmap out with a lot of stuff, but you really need to kind of keep it bare bones. And then finally, we need probably a design for sign up. And once these things are designed, right? So like, let's say, okay, I designed the homepage. I need my developers or marketers. I think a good solution is Framer if you haven't seen Framers, but let's say my marketers are going to make the homepage. So they created the homepage. So I planned it after that week. So first 3 weeks, we designed the homepage. Next 3 weeks, they're not coding it, but they're building it in Framer. It's a no code solution. Okay, great. Okay, we need a contact us page. Well, they're going to have to build that contact page, right? Contact us. And then they need to connect it to HubSpot. HubSpot is like a CRM, like Salesforce. It's just going to kind of manage your prospects coming to the website, right? And you might notice that like, well, it looks like they have nothing to do in the first weeks of January. Well, I think developing that marketing material, develop marketing material, it's really key here. I'm just going to go inside Figma really quick here. Make this a lot smaller. Great. So I think you'll kind of notice like you might be asking yourself like, okay, why lay everything out? Like why plan everything out like this? Right? I just want to talk about like what's the purpose of the roadmap? Like what is legit the point, right? A big thing that a lot of organizations struggle with is the roadmap is just like a talking piece. It's like an art piece in a museum that you're building. And it's a way for people like, did you talk to the CEO? Like, what's the strategy with the product, right? Like, does this align with his vision of what he wants to build with what everyone else is doing? So it's really just to achieve alignment, right? Is everyone on the same page from the sales team, from the UI designers, from the software team, from the product owner? You can talk to the software manager with this roadmap. I've gone over the roadmap with a software manager or CTO and asked him like, is this feasible right now? I think that we should do this. Do you think it's feasible within this time frame? And he might say like, hey, your RBAC feature, let's just copy this really quick. Your RBAC feature, um, this might take 2 months, 3 months, maybe. It's a complicated feature. And you say, okay, that makes sense. And if you'll have a bi-weekly meeting, you might say like, okay, we don't think we can get this done in time. We have to pivot, right? So a pivot just means like, hey, we push this off. We need to start working on the sign up. So it provides like a high level by like a 3 by 3 week basis to say like, hey, what are we working on? What's coming up? Should we push things forward or push things back? Another great thing about a roadmap is asking yourself, are customers excited? Do we have budget for this? Um, the second thing is communicating to customers a vision and a promise. Businesses are just promises at the end of the day. My business is promising you guys on how to be a better product manager just based on my experiences in the past, right? And kind of learning what works and what doesn't work. Another promise here is to just build excitement. Like when Apple does the product reveal of the year, kind of the Apple event that everyone watches, that's just like a little bit of the roadmap out in public and people kind of communicating like, hey, look, we're implementing AI into the Apple product, into the iPhone, right? I honestly recommend that if you're a B2B business, like if your product is really complicated or it's a video game where it's a little bit more complicated, they release their roadmaps publicly. And that's great because that builds a lot of trust and authority to basically just say that like, hey, this is what we're building in a few months. So we're not like a dead studio, we're working on this actively. And people like seeing that. They like seeing that the product they bought, you bought a video game and there's a update like 6 months later after I bought it. That's great. That keeps me excited. I want to keep playing that, right? Another great thing about it is to explain delays. Things won't always go right. You can develop a plan and the plan will just hit the wall. That's completely normal. Completely expect that. That's okay. But you need to update the roadmap because you have to communicate to everyone that we pivoted. That's what it does. It's a really, really great tool at that. And it also, you can communicate publicly and saying, hey, look, we didn't deliver on this roadmap item because of XYZ. And consumers will understand. They'll be like, yeah, we totally get it. You're a small indie studio. Um, you know, it's a way to just kind of keep them updated in the loop. So um, So yeah, that's how I would use the roadmap. You would just kind of take these epics and fill this out for the whole year, and then kind of look at a high level. How do we kind of break it down, right? So um, you need to look at things quarter by quarter. So this is what I call like abstraction of the roadmap. So for my book that I'm working on right now, I made a go to market campaign, and I'm going to work on that every quarter for my business. And then I'm making these educational videos. So that in the first quarter right now, I'm just like, okay, let's make a bunch of videos, and then let's add the blog post. Then let's get the Gumroad setup payment and the financial transactions, and then kind of the release or launch moment, I should say, launch here, right? And then there's the process of developing or writing that book. Like if I was developing code, right, you have to develop product over time. So this is abstraction, and at the end of the day, what you'll do is you kind of read this. You say like, well, what's the theme of this first quarter? Well, the theme of the first quarter is just I deleted it, unfortunately. Front page. This was 500. I think I could have had something ridiculous. All right, perfect. All right, the theme of the first quarter was the front page, right? But those like task and user stories were kind of like the details behind that and what kind of sacrifices and trade-offs you'll have to make. That's another great thing about the roadmap is that you need to kind of communicate with your CEO or your software manager about what trade-offs are you making. Are we going to make the solutions page right now? Can we really afford that time? Maybe we should focus on the sign up first and designing that, right? So those decisions are not as easy as I'm making them sound, but that's sort of the idea. So that's sort of the theme for the first quarter, right? And then you would just kind of like fill out the rest here. Let's look at some last roadmaps, some real roadmaps here. Oh, I forgot to say this. So at the end of the day, what you're going to do with your abstract roadmap, you're just going to take this, right click. Oh, have to show. All right, you just kind of highlight it, and then on the right hand side, you can just export. There was an export here. You have to create a component. Yeah, there's an export in the lower left, and then you just click export component. So I'm exporting it as like a PNG or PN. And then you're just going to kind of like honestly, you're just going to throw this into your PowerPoint presentations and communicate for 5 minutes that like this is the direction we are going, right? And the things with roadmaps is like it the things with roadmaps is that your job is not to communicate like this is what we have to do. It's not authoritative. It is collaborative. It's an ongoing discussion. And really successful organizations, yeah, look at any of them, they're really good at alignment and collaboration. That is just a key point. You are working with people in a professional way to align what needs to get done and communicating the bumps in the road because there are a lot of bumps in the road. But let's look at some real life roadmaps. This is a roadmap from a game called Foxhole, and they've taken their roadmap and published it. And it gives me an idea of like in the early summer, we have an update. They're going to have a new feature for me in the video game. Okay, in the summer, then winter, and then next year, 2025, this is all old. They'll have all these great features. I love that. Or another game here called Songs of Conquest. They have like an early access roadmap. Oh, they're implementing multiplayer improvements, or they'll randomly generate maps. So there's like more content for people to play, things like that. And that's publicly on their website. It's publicly every time they make release notes. Another roadmap is basically a timeline. It's a timeline of this is flu vaccine. So when I worked at Sanofi, they call them flu campaigns, right? So you're kind of making all the manufacturing and production within kind of this spring to summer uh, uh, section here, right? You're working really hard to make all the vaccines, and then through October, you're kind of shipping them out for people to kind of get them and use them, right? So that's basically what a roadmap does for a company and a product. It kind of communicates like, hey, we're in this mode, we're going to that mode, we're going to this problem. I think that's it. So if you guys have any questions that I could provide, I think there's a lot more I can talk about, like the SaaS funnel. I could go in depth about Rice a little bit, maybe show you some like real life examples possibly. But just if you watch this far, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. So if you could like and subscribe, and also sign up for the book, sign up to my newsletter for the book. You'll get a free copy of that book out in I think August. So thank you so much.